Hrund, I'm so happy to see your beautiful face on the
No,
screen
lovely.
and back with me. I feel like we're friends, even though we've never met in
Absolutely. It's so
person.
lovely to be here with you again and meet you again and have this conversation. I'm really happy. I've been really excited about this conversation.
Me too. I love talking about intuition, and it seems to be something that obviously it's accessible to each and every one of us. But I think we forget to access it. We don't know how to hear it. We don't even know. Often, a lot of people confuse it. They're like, how do I know if it's my intuition speaking or if it's my mind? Like, how do I know? But your work is more specifically connected to the Icelandic intuition, enlightening. And so, please go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the way that reframe or frame our
Yes.
understanding about intuition today, given the most recent science, practice, research, but also ancient and timeless wisdom,
Yes.
spiritual wisdom and stuff like that. Then I started to just really look at the Icelandic word for intuition, and it's such a beautiful word, and it holds a lot of wisdom. So the way that I use the Icelandic word has turned into a concept and a framework.
That you
So
originated?
yeah, yes.
Got
So
it.
so so the Icelandic word insight. If you look it up in the dictionary, it's written in lowercase letters like you have intuition in the dictionary, and the explanation is very similar to what you have in other dictionaries.
Okay.
But when I had done preliminary research and also just went through the process of connecting with my intuition, I just, the word kind of came to life for me. So I looked at it like a sculpture. I'm a very visual thinker.
Yes.
So I saw the word and I thought, oh my God, it's so wise. So also a nerd for words. And the Icelandic word is combined of two words, which is in and sae. In means insight or into, and sae means to see or the sea. And so when I had started to piece together from different disciplines, schools of thoughts and cultures and timelines what we know about intuition today, I just saw how insight captures what we need to know in order to understand what intuition is, in order to be able to align with it and to master it. And so the threefold meaning of the Icelandic concept for intuition, InnSaei, is written with a capital I and a capital S to underline that this is a concept and we're working with these two meanings. The meaning of the concept is threefold. First of all, it means the sea within. So this refers to our ever-flowing, incredibly dynamic, fast-working unconscious mind, which constantly is flowing and making connections way, way, way faster than our focused conscious mind could ever grasp. And so, poetically, if you put the sea within into silos or boxes, it ceases to flow. And just this poetic sentence describes so much about the logic and the nature of intuition. So, how is it formed over time? How does it develop over time? Where does it come from? And it also helps us understand that intuition is an embodied intelligence. It's intelligence in its purest form, and it's stored in all our bodies. So not just a small part of our brain. And this helps us understand how we as humans, how we navigate through life, experiences, how we pick up data points and information, not just with our eyes or ears or as we read or whatever it is. And then secondly, insight means to see within. And I love the clarity of this sentence. It's like, do you see inside yourself? Do you see within yourself? And this refers to this crucial element of being in general able to align with your intuition and listen to it. And that has to do with self-awareness, knowing yourself well enough. It has to do with metacognition, our ability to observe our thought processes and understand how they are. Because when we can work on these things, then we are able to discern, like you mentioned at the start, between intuition and fears, intuition and biases, intuition and addictions and impulses, wishful thinking, And we can also, in this part of the work, begin to understand when can I rely on my intuition and when can't I? And when should I be trying it? And when should I just let go of it? So this is super practical and I would say in so many ways tangible part of our intuition skill building. And then the third meaning is to see from the inside out. And this third part has to do with building a strong inner compass, which we base on the first two meanings. So here you sharpen, you strengthen your inner compass, which enables you to navigate with energy, clarity, and relative ease through the ocean of life, through uncertainty, through transition, and work and life. And when we talk about uncertainty, I think it's basically what we know for sure about the life we live today and the world we live in. It's absolutely uncertain. So just a few words about uncertainty. We know from science and most recent research, and I also learned from ancient wisdom that when we are faced with complexity and uncertainty and the unknown, this is when a well-honed intuition is going to be our greatest asset, our greatest skill to have.
This is so good and so deep. So thank you for clarifying. So this is your actual framework. This is not the Icelandic.
No.
InnSaei is the Icelandic term for intuition.
Yeah.
Capital I, capital S, InnSaei is your
Yeah.
framework that you've
Yeah.
developed over the last 25 years.
Yeah. 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I want to underscore something else too, because I think sometimes, and I'm not quite sure why, and I'd love your thoughts on it. Intuition is thought of like not woo woo, but just not something to lean into. I'm not going to read your entire bio because I will read parts of it when I do the formal introduction for this conversation. But I was curious because I saw you were a Yale World Fellow. So I Googled that. Ladies, 4,200 applicants from overseas and 16 are selected. I don't know the year you were done, but this is a very prestigious recognition and program. And so you have a woman here who has this like incredible bio, which you will have heard in the introduction, and worked 100 hours a week, burnt out, and you realize that this was so vital. So can you unpack some of this for us? Because I think when people can hear like this isn't something frivolous or like, oh yeah, everyone's got intuition, but we don't really care. No, we need to care. Why?
Oh,
Why do we need to care?
thank you for that framing of that question. That's beautiful. You also bring in the urgency, which is the reason why I focus on this in my life. Like this is what I want to do with my life before I end, before it ends, rather. So intuition is something that we all have. Intuition is contrary to what many of us have been taught or what we've thought and what I thought first. Intuition is fundamental to our intelligence. And so some of the things that I've discovered and I think are like so important is sometimes we are familiar with intuition because we follow our intuition and we know it's important. We can't quite describe it, but it has to do with our well-being and the way we live our lives, the way we make our life choices. But then we also have intuition, which is, as I said earlier, fundamental to our intelligence and has to do with our ability as humans to make our greatest discoveries. One of the researches I've explored this was made on a group of Nobel laureates to really document this. And then in between these two, we also have the intuition that many of us are familiar with from the workplace and schooling and education, and that has to do with judgment. But in all these three scenarios, we are talking about the same intuition. So think about what this means. So if you are a business, you're a CEO of a business, you've heard about intuition and why it's important when it comes to judgment and also to really avoid biases and any kind of woo-woo connotations or irrational impulses and so on and so forth. This is what the conversation has been around to a large extent when it comes to the workplace. But what I am bringing into it is to say that on an equal level, we have the intuition that keeps us aligned with ourselves and in tune with who we are, what we are about, and how we feel at ease as we go through life. And then our intuition, which really drives our greatest discoveries and our artistic creative capacity and insights. So, to your question, when I started my career, I was a journalist on foreign news, and then I studied development and complex emergencies, focusing on working for the United Nations in post-conflict context. It was my dream job. I loved doing it. It was meaningful. I was in really good contact and connection with the people on the ground, uh, whom I was serving as somebody leading a UN agency. This is like 25 years ago or
Okay.
so.
Yes.
Today. So I was very young when I was given that responsibility. And my intuition at work was actually incredibly good. So it really served me when I was building bridges between dividing parties and building a common vision for the future, which would allow people to work together instead of being divided, so on and so forth. But when it came to my personal life, my intuition was like I was not listening to it. I was so disconnected from it, and I was so disconnected from myself. But Michelle, if you would have met me at the time and you would have said to me, Hrund, do you feel disconnected from your inner voice? And I'd be like, oh no, of course not. I'm like so aligned, but, but I really wasn't. And some of the ways that this showed up in was because I was truly hard on myself. I was serving people who had gone through war, so my well-being, good night's sleep really didn't matter, I thought. And so I drove myself really hard. And one of the ways that this showed up in and maybe I shared this also in our first conversation, and I've shared this in my book and film as well, is when I was traveling from Kosovo, where I was working, to Kazakhstan in the beginning of the year in January. I had to stay over in Frankfurt airport in a hotel there for a night in order to reach my destination in Kazakhstan, where we were going to be working for a couple of weeks. And in the middle of the night, early in the morning, I wake up with this excruciating pain and I start to bleed. I don't know what's happening. And I just think about catching my flight. I take some painkillers, which a kind person at the hotel gave me because it's something I don't carry with me. And I just continued with work and travel. And it was only about 2 years later that I was coming into contact with the rest of my body and my emotional landscape that I realized that I'd had a miscarriage.
Mm.
I didn't even realize it at the time. And it's still, I've shared this story before, but it's still strange to say it. It's like, how can you not know? But that's truly what it was. And I don't think I gave intuition any space into my life. And it obviously had ripple effects on many other areas in my life. And I recently summarized this in a talk I gave where I was sharing with the audience. It was like a collective community of human resource managers in Iceland. And we were talking about change and uncertainty and how we navigate it and how we deal with all these changes. And I shared with them at the end of my talk, I said, I've been a manager and a leader who went through changes in my life, and I found them incredibly, terribly hard, and they stifled me. And this is where I crashed. This is when I had a burnout. This is when I had to rebuild myself basically again. And then I've also had the experience to be a manager and a leader who goes through radical changes in my life. But I managed to grow and flourish through them. And the only difference between the two was that in the latter case, I was deeply aligned with my intuition and I was following it in the way that I teach intuition as a well-honed intuition. So that's also a different part of that's also an important part of how I approach intuition.
So There's so much to cover there. And I just jotted down some notes. You said you weren't listening on a personal level, but professionally, you were very aligned. And I love the word alignment. And you weren't giving yourself the space to hear it or receive what you needed to know. So it begs the question, how does intuition speak? How is it that you were aligned professionally, but not personally? What were you hearing or at least listening to? And why were you more receptive professionally? And personally, you thought you were aligned, but you weren't.
Yeah,
Because I'm sure
exactly.
a lot of women who are listening are in that same dance.
Yes, exactly. It's a very, very common feeling to have. And yeah, there's a story about that from one of the participants in my um, InnSaei signature course, which I might be able to share later. But so when it comes to intuition, we talk about domain specificity. So you can have a very strong intuition in a certain domain, but not in others. So let's say that
Yes.
you are a pilot, you have a really good intuition as a pilot, but you don't have good intuition when it comes to playing football or taking decisions, buying stocks, or in your private life. So when we talk about intuition and all this different research, this we know, you know. And what I'm trying to say is that when you don't have a strong intuition in your private life, it's something that you should work on. So the difference is, you know, for the women listening, so just imagine you're at work, you're in your zone, you're in your element, you're in a good flow and you know what you're doing, you feel grounded in yourself and you sense what your team is not asking. And so you kind of you know how to lead your team, you're sensing it, and you're also sense making with the environment around you, whatever market it is or whatever it is that you do. Like if you work with people, then you tuned into the atmosphere in the room, or stuff like that. We all know this feeling. It's like you're navigating with ease, that you've got this, right?
Hmm.
You can't quite explain it, but you do. So this means that your intuition, your analytical mind, your logical mind is all in one synchronicity, working really fluidly together. Mental agility is superb. But when in your private life, and this is something that is super important. This is when, if you are disconnected from your intuition in your private life, it's likely that you have a tendency to dismiss what you feel about things. It's likely that you have a tendency to want things, you don't want to shake the boat. You want everybody to be happy and good. You don't want to raise your voice about something because it can destroy the evening or the good plans that we have ahead of ourselves. Or you just put yourself aside again and again. This can be very subtle, and it doesn't have to be like big things in each case, but when you do this regularly and again and again and again and again, it piles on top of each other. And what happens is that you are dismissing, even subtly, your emotions and your experiences of things. And what this does to your intuition is that it undermines your confidence in your own judgment. You start to understand what it is to really think about things. You start to doubt your own decisions and what you feel or think about things. This can also easily translate into the work domain. And insecurities in your work domain, your sphere of work, can also translate into your personal life. So I think, so just putting this into words like I'm doing now, I don't think I would have been able to do that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that out loud because I want all of us to recognize that intuition it has its own language and signals that it gives us. And it may take us a lot of time to explain verbally what it is that we're sensing or feeling, but believe me, we can train it, we can hone it. And it's possible, but to it's important to learn it, because I also feel like the people that I work with, and this was absolutely the case with myself, sometimes you have a sense of what your intuition is going to tell you. So if anyone has that now who's listening, and it has to do with your private life, and you don't feel ready to voice it, to do anything about it, then my message to you is like, it's okay. You don't have to do anything about it right now. Just acknowledge that it's there for you because it allows it to come, up from the sea within to emerge into your conscious mind. You can see it, observe it, look at it from different angles, reflect on it, think about it. And if you are ready one day to act on it, then do it. If you're not, it's your decision. Own your decision about the direction you take in life and when you're ready to take them. I had a life-changing intuition so many years ago about my fundamental, one of the fundamental pillars of life. It took me about 15 years to act on it. You know,
Yeah.
and so I just feel like it's important to say this because a lot of people avoid doing the work to align with and hone their intuition because they don't want to know what's going to come. And my message is like, don't worry. It's and like the work you do as a coach, it's the self-care and the self-love is about acknowledging what's stirring inside you in the sea within. Intuition has been brewing for some time. It's not just something that pops up out of nowhere. It's something that we've been carrying in our bodies and in our system and in our senses for often a very long time. But when it comes to the surface of the sea within, and we can see it or name it, or we may look at it and think like, oh my God, it's here, I can't take it, but see it, acknowledge it, journal about it, allow it to be what it is, and then be kind to yourself. Be your best person so that if you ever feel ready to act on it, you might take the decision to do it. But also when we see it for what it is, it can also change. Our relationship with it, whatever it is, can also change. So just by recognizing something that we are afraid of seeing can also change our relationship with it so that it doesn't have to end up in a way that we had anticipated would be a negative outcome or whatever it is that we are avoiding.
That is so important and so good. It's so good and so relatable because I'm realizing that so much of how my intuition has spoken to me and the decisions I've made, sometimes it's been 10 years in the making, right? Until I've actually
Yes.
acted, whether that was moving from the East Coast to the West Coast in terms of when the right timing is, writing my first book. I have another book in me. I think I might have mentioned it last time. It's been percolating for a decade.
Yes.
And I know I'm supposed to write this book. I've never felt anything more strongly than I have. And when I journal, I keep being told, write, but I haven't fully dove into that. So I think that's so nice because I think it gives someone a sense of like, okay, yes, you might hear the message, but it's okay if you're not ready or it's not
Mm.
the right time or you don't have maybe it's an act of courage or whatever it might be to actually get into motion on whatever it is.
Yes, exactly. And I love that example because and also with your book, with my work and those who are listening, I think most of us experience at some point in our life that when so I love journaling and you journal and we know that's a very important facilitator for accessing our intuition and who we are and how we feel about things. Um, so when we journal, sometimes we realize that the things that are standing in our way to realize our dreams, they are things that we honor in a way that we are willing to wait and see what happens if we still want to do it after a long time or not, or after a year or half a year, whatever. That's one thing. But sometimes what pops up for us are things that we ask ourselves, like, am I really willing to not do this because of this? Just to give you an example, when I took this big decision to leave my jobs in Iceland and move to another country and like really give my energy and care to InnSaei and bring that out into the world. One of my biggest obstacle was that then I would have to have my face and people would know who I am. Like I am the writer. I have to put my face online and tell people this is me doing this. This comes from me and my experience. And I just felt there was such an explosion, And I felt very vulnerable because I like to be just a name on a newspaper or something, but not necessarily the face, stuff like that. So that was my challenge. But then at some point I realized, am I willing to just not do it because of that? I'm like, come on, Trent, chop chop, let's just get over that and let's just find a way to build up the courage and feel more comfortable with this. And now I feel very different about it because I had the time to make that choice for me. So when we talk about changes, it's also that element with intuition. It's like when you have a good relationship with intuition, change is hard when it's forced upon you and you are unprepared. Intuition does make you better prepared for the unexpected when you're connected with it and present. But when you decide to change your life or significant elements in it or small elements in it based on your intuition,
Yes.
you realize or you remember thinking back that that change wasn't actually that hard, you
Yes.
know, because you decided that change. So I think it's yeah,
The other thing I want to underscore that you said too, with women in particular, is that oftentimes we do get in a habit of making decision by consensus. What do you want for dinner? What do you want for dinner? Should we paint this wall this color? You may know just what you want, but when you are within a family structure or wanting to please others, even whether it's with friends or whatever, you
yeah,
can discount your own knowing or your own voice in service of sort of group think or group people pleasing or whatever you want to call it, which is why I think, especially for my show in particular, it's inviting women off the sidelines into her starring role where she is ready, where
yeah,
she has that calling,
yeah,
and so really aligning with that, what's meaningful to her, so that at the end of her life, she looks back and says, I lived what was important for me and not
yeah,
solely in service of others.
yes. Yes, exactly. No, this is so important. There's for those of us who've had children, who have carried children, we have this, hormonal experience of just being caring about not only our kids, but our just people we meet on the streets and everyone. We just want to take everyone and just hug them. There's
Totally.
there's this like and which is beautiful, great. But then there's a time for us to also come back home to ourselves a little bit.
Exactly. Yes.
And I just think it's a very human challenge for all of us,
Yes.
setting our own boundaries and understanding that setting our own boundaries is the work we need to do regularly because our boundaries change. We change and we are allowed to grow and change. And we are allowed to say one day to our family and loved ones, I've always wanted to do this, and then they might say to us, that's very unlike you. I have never heard you say anything like this before. And the challenge here is to just let that go through you and say, yep, I've never shared it. No one ever asked me, or this is how I feel now, whatever.
Yes.
But that can be a challenge when we've been in that service and care role
Yes.
for a long time. So we've forgotten what it is to say what we think about things.
Yes. Yes. And it is so beautiful to be in service. And I'm not saying that there isn't, oftentimes, especially as a new mother, you are sidelining yourself in service of a new life.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Mhm.
beautiful and necessary. But also, there is a time where you need to be able to reintegrate and have that voice or
Yeah.
have that owning. Now, you
Yeah.
mentioned journaling. So, is that a tool you teach? How does one use it to get connected with intuition? Because we started with how do you hear it? So is that a
Yeah.
way to access it that's easier than thinking? Like how, give us some
Yeah.
resources in terms of how to hear it. If someone's like, this sounds great, but how do I know what my intuition is trying to say to me?
Yes, that's a great question. So I have a few methods and techniques that I teach. I share them in my book, but I also teach them in different settings. So journaling is like I can't underline it enough. It's so important. So let's just talk about two main ways of journaling that I really think are fundamental in this
Please.
text. And one of them
Yes.
is journaling in a stream of consciousness. with Julia Cameron, the queen of journaling, calls Morning Pages.
Yes.
And I actually so recommend her book, The Artist's Way. I mean, I did the whole book like a workshop when I was 20 something, and it was absolutely transformative.
That's when I found it too. That's so funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, my late
yeah,
20s. Yes.
yeah, and it's a really, really powerful book. And in recent years, science has been like absolutely supporting what she's been saying from an artistic, soulful voice. Anyway, so when you journal in a stream of consciousness, and the best time to do it is first thing in the morning. If you can't do it in the morning, then you just do it at another time of the day. But if you can in the morning, even if it's just for 3 to 5 minutes to start with, and you use a pen or a pencil and a diary or a paper, it's important that you do that, but not a keyboard or not a sound like voice message or something. Because when you write with your hand, engages the nervous system and the physiology in the way that it deepens your ability to reflect. Remember, intuition is an embodied intelligence, and it also helps you remember better so that what you are carrying in your mind, what is filling your headspace, what is swirling around in your consciousness, you allow to go down on a piece of paper and you write this without any judgment. You are just the extension of what's floating around in your mind. So what happens is that you clean up space in your mind, but you also realize that you also get to know the thoughts that are taking up space in your mind. We have about 6,200 thoughts per day. That's excluding the thought processes that happen when you sleep, according to a recent research. And we only are aware of a fraction of all these thoughts that we have filling our minds every day. So when we start to write in a stream of consciousness, you begin to just look black and white in what's going on in your mind, because we are not our thoughts. We are the thinkers of our thoughts. And it's very important to take ownership of what it is that you are thinking, and in particularly when it comes to you and your environment and other people around you. Because even if we are unaware of most of our thoughts, they still shape how we show up, perceive, interact, express, react to something. So it's super important to understand what the thought pattern is in your mind. And that's
Yes.
the one of the first steps that we take in order to break habits or allow new sense of possibility into our minds.
And Run, do
So
you
I
go back and read them or you don't? How do you do it?
so I sometimes do that today, but when I start when people do this for the first time, I teach them to write in a stream of consciousness like this.
Hmm.
But then I add another technique which I then build on, which I can tell you about to answer that question. And that technique is called attention journaling. So our attention is not only the key to our intuition, and by attention, I mean the way we pay attention with our whole body. When you get goosebumps, chills down your spine, knot in your stomach, warmth across your chest, these are all information that your body is processing and trying to tell you. So attention is the key to our intuition in this embodied sense. So not only what you notice when you look around you, but attention is also a super scarce resource in today's world, and it's highly sought after. So there are these incredible market forces that are geared to hijack your attention. It's how they make money. So it's a very important part of our personal lives, growth, ability to be aligned with who we are, to gain stewardship, to gain control over our own attention to the extent possible, of course. I mean, we can't do it entirely, but so attention journaling is a process that people go through when they work with me, and it has radical impact on how we think and how we start to understand what attention is. It's several ways of how we pay attention. We tune into it in different ways. For example, when we move the spotlight of attention around, imagine you are in a theater. It's pitch black because no light has been turned on. You're alone in the theater. All of a sudden, a spotlight is turned on in the middle of the stage, and you see this white circle on the stage. And then you can, with your mind's energy, move the spotlight around, and then you start to see the walls and the ceiling and other people maybe in the room. So this is what you can do also as you navigate through the days and at work to see different perspectives.
Yeah.
And so I teach this. So at the end, there's a process in both these techniques. So at the end of X number of days, you sit down and you browse over your pages and you mix all this together in your journal, the stream of consciousness and the attention journaling. Attention journaling is strictly about paying attention to what you pay attention to and document it. So what you pay attention to is not like I woke up this morning and no, it's not that. It's more like, oh, the light was sharp. The energy in the room was like this. The way she wore her trousers. It's just like these like Kodak flash moments that you experience because your attention is all over the place. So it's about grabbing these moments to connect you with what it is that you are paying attention to, because that is what fills the tank for your intuition.
Mm.
And most of the things that intuition is basing its navigation on are unconscious information. So you're not aware of so much. So all of this is about you becoming more in tune, aligned with, and aware of how it is that you are filling your unconsciousness and your mind with information, and how your intuition is directing you, mostly unconsciously, but you want to be more conscious about it. So there's an exercise where you review your pages, you pick out 10 words randomly, you write these 10 words in a vertical line on a blank paper. You just sit with these words and you look at them and allow them to speak to you. You don't deliberate what they're going to. It's like you're creating cosmos out of chaos. You are honing in on your intuition. You are teaching yourself how to train your intuition and allow data to come into your mind so that you can make sense out of the data without being deliberate or manipulative,
Right. You're not letting your ego sort of guide what the meaning is. You're allowing it to sort of
Yeah.
come from within.
Yeah, come from within and read the signs and the symbols and the experiences embedded in these words for you at this moment, because they may not make any sense together on a piece of paper when you look at them first glance. But when you give yourself time to observe them and just, you just let go of control and you just think like, what are they trying to tell me? What is popping up for me? And then things start to connect and you create your cosmos out of this chaos. So it's one of those exercises that we train. And the most difficult part of this is letting go of control.
Yes.
Because we used to be given assignments and we are stressed that we won't be able to deliver them. And we are stressed that we won't do it in the right way. And we are stressed that we don't know what it's going to look like in the end. So when we are worried about all these things, it also means that we are closing out the logic that intuition is all about. So we have to carve out the space for intuition to speak to us. So this is one of the many ways that we can train our minds to be more balanced between intuition and analysis and creativity and logic and so on and so forth.
So it's so interesting. So when you're speaking, it's going right into my soul. What's so ironic is so I did a solo cast that airs today, and I did a 6 month social media detox because we're talking about this attention and where it's
Yes.
going and how I wasn't feeling good about where I was spending my attention. But the other thought that I had was a post I had done a year ago on this idea of spotlighting, which is
Ah,
so curious that you mentioned that, because I was potentially going to do that for the solo cast, because I'm like, I can focus on the one person who's not being kind or has said something,
yes,
or I can broaden the light, or move the light over to the people who
yes,
are giving support and love, or I can laser focus on that problem, or I can broaden things up or move it over and, focus on the gratitude of what's working versus what's not. So I just thought it's sort of interesting that that's what you chose to say. And I got goosebumps. So that's my intuition saying this is resonating? So
Yeah,
what, because I was
this
going to ask
resonance.
you about goosebumps or chills. Is that,
Yeah,
and how aligned is intuition with our soul? Because it feels very
yeah,
aligned to me.
yeah. It's very aligned. So absolutely. So the our higher self, our soul, our deep sense of purpose, direction, values, our inner compass, it's very much aligned. So when you get goosebumps, which is like you know something is right,
Yes.
it's your eureka moment. This means that what you are experiencing is deeply resonating, but
Yes.
you didn't know that you were missing it, or you didn't know exactly what it was, or you didn't have the exact right words. Do you know what I mean? So there's this like
Yes.
alignment again. So if you get chills down your spine, and if it's an uncomfortable feeling, like let's say you get chills down your spine because there's somebody in the room that you do not want to be close to, or something like
Yes.
that,
Yes.
that scares you.
Yeah.
This means that what is in front of you is disjointed with your intuition. So it means that you want to go out of that situation.
Mm.
But sometimes things happen that are like a jolt, you know. It's like a jolt that just kind of poof, comes through you.
Yes.
And that is when you discover something that, and it can be so random. It can be so like how do you say hversdagslegt? It can be so seemingly unimportant, but somebody says something or you read something in a totally different context. You know all these stories about the person who was trying to discover the cure for this disease, and then they
Right.
stop thinking about it, they wash their hands, and it comes to them.
Right.
There's a connection. It can be in water, it can be in material. It doesn't have to be words or logical things, but there's something that they see in a way that reflects back to them. This is the answer you were looking for. So that's
Mm.
another type of alignment. You did not expect to find that in that context. And sometimes when we practice creating cosmos of chaos, then we are practicing our attention, we are practicing our intuition and our cognitive abilities to hone in on intuition more often than we would otherwise.
Yes. Let me ask you because you're right about the attention with AI and the push. And I use ChatGPT so often now, not to write for me, but to process or, yeah, I might take the show notes and say, give me a draft.
Yeah,
But I also started realizing it doesn't feel good if it's something creative or something I feel like I'm now losing my voice using.
yeah,
And so, with the advent of where we're going, and with obviously with the social media and the younger generations who have almost exclusively been exposed to this, how do we create these guardrails and these boundaries so that we don't lose the essential essence of what makes us unique and allows us to bring our gifts into the world? Because that's my fear for the future.
yeah. So there's so many things in that. And I'm going to try my best to remember the points I want to make here. First of all, for our cognitive ability, we need to be using our brains and our mental capacity and our intelligence. So
Yes.
it's like when we use our muscles, they're just gonna wither away, you know, and we're gonna find it hard to walk one day. So the same has is applies to our intelligence. So that the research we have today about how AI is impacting our intelligence and brilliance or genius, whatever. Research is so far is showing us that um, we can't become lazy with our thinking processes. So there's this kind of, and it's kind of intuitive, right? It's like don't let AI think for you.
Yes.
Ask it questions that can both challenge your intuition on
Yes.
something. It's like you have an intuitive feeling about something, and you can use AI to help you, like prompt different scenarios so that you know which one is speaking to you and which isn't, you know, like stuff like that, to think critically, basically.
Yes.
But when we ask AI to think for us in the mental processes that we need to maintain and continue to practice to be intelligent in general and not stupid, you know, and
Yes.
to be conscious and not just kind of being directed by external devices or opinions. These are very important things. So with AI, this is important for us to keep in mind. And it's also to understand that to understand what AI is, it's algorithms as well. So like you mentioned social media algorithms that were particularly geared towards young people.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we know this now through research, especially after 2010 and 12, but no less importantly, throughout the COVID pandemic. It was really like put on steroids, the algorithm. So a recent research that was done in the Arts Academy in Iceland about the impact on algorithms, and uh, it's called core aesthetics. For those who are deep into social media, I don't want to go too much into explaining it, but it's like core aesthetics is like a recipe that young people are given about how they should dress, behave, think, and what they should like to read and do and eat and everything. But it doesn't give them any space for self-reflection or expression. So the minute you start to express yourself, you're kind of put aside. So you don't want to be out of the community and
Yeah.
ostracized. You need to be in the community so that you're conditioned to just behave. But what happens and what this research shows is, and many other researchers, I'm sure, but it shows that the way that these algorithms have been designed and aggressively tailored has served to fragment young people's sense of self.
Hmm.
So just imagine. So, a sense of self, who you are, your soul, your purpose in life, is strategically being fragmented so that you can't put the pieces together to have a strong core. And one of the things that we do in order to come home to ourselves, to be able to align with intuition in general, is to remember who we are. What is my sense of self? What is my being? Like, what do I stand for? What do I care about? Because when people have opinions about you, they can speak badly about you, like people experience online, for example, or you are worried you don't fit in, that nobody's going to like you because that's what you are conditioned to think or whatever. And if you don't know what it feels to have a sense of self or a strong sense of self, that's a very, very seriously bad situation to be in.
Yeah.
So there is so much to be concerned about there.
Yeah. And your work, tell us more about, so when I know you have a program, but also like day to day, are you working with leaders? What's the objective? Like
Yeah.
who are you trying to reach? Because we're benefiting as, there are leaders here, there's stay-at-home moms, there's, women in all sort of aspects of work or not work. But what's your primary focus these days?
So my primary focus is I work with leaders. So leaders in your own life, you are going through transition or changes. You want to take leadership over your own life, and leaders who are, out there in the world doing different things. So I work with people one-on-one as a leadership coach, and I specialize in leadership coaching that helps people navigate uncertainty and changes. It's called psychosynthesis coaching, and I combine it with my intuition work. And I absolutely love doing that. And I've worked with some amazing people this year. And so that's something that I do. I have only a few people that I coach at a time, but I really cherish that and do my best to take enough time and give the attention that people deserve when they're being coached. Then I also offer InnSaei signature course, which is my kind of, well, signature. I use that word because this is a course where you go, where you learn to align with and hone your intuition through the framework of InnSaei. And you have access to me throughout. So it's not an automated thing, so it's like really combination of self-paced, but also coding and community learning with peers. And we have two cohorts doing the course now, and they are just amazing group of people. And already we have signups for the course that starts in January, but I'll only be offering that once or twice a year. And yeah, so these are the two basic things that I'm doing apart from giving talks and stuff like that. But this is how I work with people.
I always love connecting with you and I love this topic. The thing is, I could go hours with you because as you're
Yeah.
talking about 10 more ideas and thoughts and questions arise because it is so significant. But I think if we could, before we wrap up, knowing that this podcast is for women and we are inviting them off the sidelines, maybe they've heard that voice, which is their intuition, sort of
Yeah.
whispering, it's been nudging at her, even if it's been a decade like me with my book or whatever. And we want her to invite her into her starring role. It's okay, whatever that timeline looks like. But based on the work that you do, what advice would you give her today?
So you're describing a woman who she knows her intuition, but she hasn't really been listening to it so much, right? So I would say for a week now, definitely hold a journal, buy a beautiful journal if you don't have one, pen or pencil, and write in the journal every morning. And one of the questions that I recommend that you write down is, when was the last time I didn't listen to my intuition? Where did I feel it in my body? And what happened as a result? And then also ask yourself this question, when was the last time I did listen to my intuition? Where did I feel it in my body and what happened as a result? So it's like a nice way of getting to know your intuition, how it speaks to you. And the minute you start to write about it and think about it, it's going to grow.
It'll speak
So
louder, maybe more clearly, or you'll
it
hear
will
it more
be,
clearly. It's a
yeah,
both. It's
you,
both. Your
yeah,
attention's
it's
now
both.
focused.
Yeah, it's both. So you really tune into it by doing this. And obviously I would recommend also my book, which is full of exercises, but just like for anyone who maybe is not ready to do that, but just like really curious about what does this mean? Like, is this something I want to explore? Then I really recommend doing this for a week or two. And the other thing that I really recommend is keep clean in the morning and the evening. And what I mean by that is first thing in the morning, sit down with a cup of tea, water, coffee, and write in your journal before you do any social media screen time or any news, like external news. Just, do that writing for you in a beautiful moment that you give yourself because you deserve it. And then also before you go to bed at night, it's also nice to write down what happened during your day, to close it, to really leave it aside so that it's not bugging you in your mind and take time from screen or whatever and do something that is nourishing. Have a conversation, cup of tea, draw, paint, knit, whatever it is that you enjoy doing. And give yourself that time for you because you want to go to bed and rest well. And you want to go to bed without worries. So writing gratitudes or whatever it is that listeners relate to, just clean that space that otherwise is noise in your head and makes you sleep bad or hard to fall asleep or wake up anxious in the night. That's an important way to clean the way to your intuition as well.
I love that. And also a clean space. One thing I gifted myself before I went away for vacation over the holiday was to make sure my office was clean. And energetically, it makes a
Love it.
difference because you feel it less mental clutter, which allows you to hear. Would you agree with that?
Yes,
Because I felt that.
absolutely. Yeah. So to me, cleaning up space is like literally like you describe your office. It's like a ritual.
Yeah.
You know, you are cleaning like when you do that mindfully, you're doing that for you and you're cleaning out the clutter. And then you may think like when you're doing it, you take a deep breath and when you breathe out, you feel like the dust is going out of your system.
Yes.
You breathe in and there's this beautiful light, glimmer, whatever it is that is fresh and nice and beautiful for you.
Yes.
Exactly. So it's that kind of, but intuition is that thing where we connect our inner world with the world around us.
Hmm. Yes.
And so it's such an important, like you're weaving a fabric, like you are part of the web of life in a way, and you come to life. It's like you get lit up with life. It's like the difference between being fully alive and merely existing.
Mm. And that's what I want for every woman listening
Yes,
to
agree.
feel. And it's okay if you're in a season where you don't feel that because it's accessible. It could be a day away and you don't even realize it, where something turns
Yes,
on and becomes the beginning of a journey towards that.
exactly.
Like
Yeah.
like your situation, it doesn't happen instantaneously, but
No, exactly.
it's the spotlight. You're moving it
Yes,
somewhere else.
exactly. And when you are aligned with your intuition, it's like you have this feeling that life is there for you. It's going to be okay. I think it's the deepest sense of security you can ever experience. So you can lose all your material belongings. We know this from the literature of yoga and spiritualism. Like you lose everything that is of material belonging or even your loved ones. But when you're deeply aligned with yourself and your intuition, this is where you get your deep sense of security. And this is why I always use the word inner compass. If I were to use a description of how I felt when I was disconnected until I became connected with my intuition, which totally transformed my whole life, what makes most sense to me to say is that I shifted the center of gravity in how I show up. So my center of gravity was not no longer lying external to me. It was absolutely anchored inside me, but always in deep, connection with the world and people around me.
Mm,
But I, like everybody else, I need to do the work and the practice, stay that way. I also get disconnected and think too much, or I forget to do, like that's being human, right?
yes,
So that's why it's important to decide this is how I want to navigate. This is how I want to live my life. We are constantly changing. The world around us is constantly changing. And intuition is combining the two. So you need to be constantly making sure that you are aligned.
absolutely. And from what you said, we can't obviously control everything in our external circumstances, but what we do have control over is that inner compass and
Yes.
like being connected to it and choosing to go within to meet what is without, right? To
Yes, yes,
to stay in alignment versus getting knocked off course too readily
yes,
all the time.
exactly, exactly.
Is there anything I didn't ask that you want to leave the women listening with today?
Um, no, I mean, I feel the same. We could go on for hours and hours. I just, it's been a wonderful conversation, and I really want, if anyone listening feels like just reaching out with a question, thought, or whatever, then don't hesitate. Just, it doesn't have to be, I want to coach or I want to do the course. Or just reach out if you feel like it, and just take that step, because there's a community of people out there who are taking these steps, and I see it every day in my work, and I see the impact that it has, and it's absolutely beautiful and transformative to witness it. So there's a if this resonates, then go for it. Whatever it is for you, just reaching out to me or doing something else, just follow that.
Thank you. Um, Love connecting with you. Thank you for the work you're doing and the
Likewise.
impact you're making in the world. This is clearly your mission and your calling, at least for now. And maybe that it
Yes, no,
evolves and
absolutely.
changes, which is what's so exciting and beautiful. And I've loved this conversation and being back with you again. So thank you for your time.
Likewise, Michelle, thank you so much. I've absolutely loved this. And thank you too for the work you do in the world.
Oh, thank you. And ladies, as you know, all the resources mentioned today will be on your podcast player with a link to Hrund's course and her book and everything that we talked about today. So thank you so much.
Thank you too. Take care, Michelle.
Thank you.